Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam She'akol Niyeh B'Baruch.
Amen.
So over the past weekend, first, welcome to shul.com, the Surfside Kolel Bobker. Over the past weekend, we have Reb Meir Eliyahu from Israel. There's two things I want to bring you up about Reb Meir Eliyahu. First, he's a tremendous Talmid Chacham. If you guys had heard him, he speaks in Hebrew and he speaks in English. He actually was in Miami. I think he taught in Queens at one point. He taught in Miami another point. And he had gone to a few places. Some places he had more success than others. But he had his most success when he had picked up and moved to Israel, started teaching in Israel, and he became, a superstar in the Torah. And I don't just mean it in the sense that he's a darshan. He's actually a Talmid Chacham who learns, he writes books, and he sources what he says. It's very important that when you learn, you have a source. Because, the religion can be very, very much convoluted. A lot of times people can say to you things that are not accurate. What I found from this, and I spoke to him about it last night, is I told him, it's very interesting that he tried 3 different cities, and on the 3rd city, he hit it good. So sometimes...
The one you would think would have the least, success because it's so difficult.
Yes, it's very difficult, and he had the most success. You know what it tells me? Sometimes in life, you're going to do something and it doesn't work. And you might think it's you. Sometimes you have to change your place. It says, Mishanim Mekomo, Mishanim Mazalo Letovah. Rav Musafi adds that last word, Letovah. Why? Because sometimes a guy can change his place and it could be detrimental. I'll show you just a small thing. I had rented a house here. Actually, I didn't rent it. A broker rented me a house when I had first come here this past year. And I didn't see the place. But the moment I walked in, the first day, and my wife walked in, they were like, this doesn't feel right. And we stayed there for like a month. And I had signed the lease for the whole year. But I tried to get through the broker. I'm like, look, we don't feel right here. The house is not the house that we wanted. There was some form of, I don't know if you want to call it deceit, but not giving over all the information. I think that would be the proper way to say it, and whatever it is what it is. Being a broker is not an easy business, especially, renting and things like that. Energy wasn't good. We literally were looking for a house and I wanted to get out quick. I ended up working out with the landlord. I told him, just keep all the money. I'm gonna end up going to the other place. No big deal. What ended up happening, we're looking for a house and we found the house literally across the street. Literally. The guy moved out while I was in discussions with the landlord. I called the landlord. I'm like, look, the new one, I want to go there. We moved right in there and Baruch Hashem, the house feels better. And it's funny because this past weekend we had Kobe over, and even Kobe, who had been in the other house, was like, wow, it feels different here. I'm like, I felt the same thing. I'm like, I don't know why that other spot had something, but you have to know in life, God created the world with different energies, and it's possible. Sometimes something just doesn't work in one place, and if you just move it a little bit, you'll be more successful. They said that there was, in Nazi Germany, there was an SS officer that had caught a Jew in one of the forests and was gonna kill him. And he had given the Jew, he said to him, I'm gonna give you your last request. And he said, once you finish your request, I'm gonna shoot you in the head. And I said, okay. He said, is it okay if we go to the other side of the street? We're here in the forest. If you just go over the river, like let's go like on the other side. The SS officer was like, that's all you want? He's like, yeah. He's like, just let's go to the other side and let's stand right there. He started walking with him. 3 minutes, he walked to the other side. And the SS officer was like, you dirty Jew, just get out of here. And he threw him out and he didn't kill him. And there's something to that. There is something that sometimes you're in a place and it's just not right. Why the reason is, I don't know. We don't have prophets today, but one day we're gonna have, when the Beit HaMikdash is gonna be rebuilt and Mashiach is gonna come, he's gonna be able to identify and say, oh yeah, you shouldn't be in this area. I don't know, maybe the Mazal, maybe something. And we should know this. This is important. Baruch Hashem, we're living in America. God bless America. Everything's great. The country is fantastic. But what we're seeing here is slowly the country that is a great country is breaking apart. And what we spoke over the Shabbat, which was very important, is that we still have many in Congress very supportive of us, the Jewish people and of Israel, but there's something else that's changing which I want to bring up today, and that's the populace. When the population, when the populace start to have no sympathy and empathy for us as a nation,
the richest man of our,
yes, like what I heard with Elon Musk. I don't know exactly. I heard about the tweet, something that he said, something of supportive that was of some anti-Semitic tropes, whatever it was. I don't know the specifics of it, but all I'm trying to tell you is that we are guests in a host country. This is not our country. This is not our homeland. You know, they said Berlin was the Jerusalem, and God had to show them, no, Berlin is not the Jerusalem, and Paris is not the Zion. You know, and these are very, very important things to know. You know, I know you're younger than some of us here, you know, maybe the youngest in the group. You need to know we are guests here. And you have to know that one day we're probably, I shouldn't say probably, we are going to go to Israel. And, you know, the ones who go earlier will be better prepared. Don't think for a second that those that are going to go to Israel, they're going to build themselves up and have those difficulties are not going to be rewarded. They will be rewarded in a way that's going to blow everybody away. Everyone's going to be like, oh, now I see all those 70, 80 years that they had through those suffering in Israel. Hashem is going to reward them thousands and thousands and thousands of times more than what you think. And of course, we're in a place of Torah, and there's a lot of reasons why we have to be in America for chinuch, for parnasa, things like that. But we should start preparing, especially buying apartments if you can, or at least scouting neighborhoods, or visiting Israel, thinking about a business, your kids, school. We don't know. But what we're reading from the article of To Flee or To Stay is that it goes by pretty quickly. Especially, what was the main issue?
It turns pretty quickly.
It turns pretty quickly.
It goes from one way to the other.
And it's fast. And usually when it turns, you know, there are always windows to leave. We've seen from the article that there were a lot of windows to leave even until late 30s. But those who left later...
The question is, when is the window? We don't know.
We don't know when the window is, but we do know that there was time, but usually as the time progressed, less and less you were able to take with you. Yeah. If you were planning to, if you even got out, if a person was planning properly, you know, he could have gotten it. Like, who were the first people that we saw in the article that left Germany? When Hitler came in 1933, his first policy was Jews cannot be professionals in the country, no doctors, no lawyers, no engineers. So all the professionals got up and said, all right, look, it can't be a doctor here. There's no choice. They picked up, they left. They were the first to leave. They almost all survived.
The doctors? The
doctors, lawyers, engineers, and anyone who needed a licensed professional from Germany, he was the first, they were the first to leave, and they were able to get out. Why?
They were the first to leave?
Because Hitler, when his party... Yes, they took away the licenses.
It's illegal to have certain jobs.
The Jew, the license is not active. Your license is no good. If you're a doctor, a lawyer.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a couple of things with that, because doctors, lawyers, engineers are generally good. They're good immigrants to bring in, and so they didn't have it difficult. But when the entire population of hundreds of thousands needed visas, it wasn't so simple. Maybe if they had a lot of money, they can invest in businesses like EB-1 visa, things like that. But that's not always the case. What we're seeing today is literally it happening. Not, of course.
1930. Actually, we're 1930.
I would say probably 1930. We're about 3 years before. Of course, I'm not a prophet, but I from what we're looking around, we have to listen. Why did God give us these abilities to be able to distinguish? What do Jewish people do that's different than the Gentiles? Is we distinguish between differences. Male, female, we separate. Good, bad, tum'ah, tahara, pure, impure. Everything that we do in our religion is all about separations. Always. We take the good thoughts when we pray, we take out bad thoughts. Everything has to do with separations, and this is very, very important and key for us. We must wake up. And this is why we're studying this article, and what we're seeing from the articles, unfortunately, if you saw, this is I think part 5 today, is that a lot of the rabbis did not signal them to leave. There were a few that did. The ones who did are one of the most successful Hasidic groups in Israel today. The ones who did not had to rebuild. Some of the rebuilding was hard. Some of the rebuilding was taking place here in the United States. And so there's a lot of reasons. Hashem put everybody in different places, but we have to wake up to what's going on. And you know, I'm not telling anyone to sell and go move right away, but wake up. And I think waking up is a good signal. I got a lot of videos this past weekend from New York. Very scary stuff. People...
I saw reports today that anti-Semitism, just in the last, month, is up 400%.
And you know, they found a grenade, it was an empty one, in Lakewood. Guys, in Lakewood, listen.
Tied to like a pole or something on the street.
You know, and I want to bring one point. You know, when I left in 2020, I had gotten a signal from a few different places and from doing a lot of research, specifically from going to a few different protests and rallies in New York, that it was time. It was time. Yeah, it was time for me to pick up and leave. And many people, and by the way, many people didn't agree with it. But Baruch Hashem, I looked around the country and I saw that LA was definitely out of the picture. Chicago was out of the picture. I wanted actually to go to Israel, but I called Rabbi David Abu Hatzera and I told him I wanted to go to Israel, and he said, wait. He didn't say no. He said, don't go so fast. He said, just wait a second. And I was very upset. Imagine you call a big rabbi in Israel and you tell him you want to go make Aliyah, and he tells you, no, don't come yet. I was very taken aback. But then I called him about a few weeks later, and I told him I want to go to Miami, and he said, go to Miami. He said, you'll be very successful here, learning, teaching. He said, go, don't worry, just go. And Baruch Hashem, we came. Now, the question is, why was Florida? Wow, Sammy, what is it? We have two Sammys here today.
We should put him over here in the front.
You know what? He make this zechut. He make.
Baruch Hashem.
He brought me back. I can have learned for 5 minutes.
All I can say, it's not wasted talent.
Yeah,
that's all I can say. It's not wasted talent. Okay. So why was Florida zoche? That Florida didn't have any of these problems that New York has, Chicago has, and LA has? It's a very good question. One has to look around the country and say, why was it? No, don't tell me it's the governor. Don't tell me it's that.
It started.
It started? Yeah. So what was it? Why do you think?
Because we're more conservative over here.
Is that the reason? What about? But there's a lot of Torah.
I think there is more Torah here.
There's more Torah. No, much more Torah in New York, New Jersey.
Where? New York is much.
No, New York. So I'm gonna give you guys an unbelievable reason why I think. Yeah, let me hear, Sammy.
Over here, it's harder to practice Torah. So the Torah here is more.
It's more geschmack.
No,
it's more. You gotta work on it. It's not so simple.
When you walk down the street and decide to go to the beach or shul, it's a harder decision to go learn. I'm saying.
Okay, that's a good reason. I'll tell you what I saw. You want to know what I saw? That I'm someone who works with a lot of different shuls, a lot of different rabbis, and probably 3 or 4 communities in New York. There's something that exists here that New York failed at big time, which was the cause of the galut to begin with. Why are we in galut today? What's the reason that the Chorban by Sheni? What was it? Sinat Hinam. Now, Sinat Hinam is an invisible thing. You can't measure it. You could feel it. It's kind of funny. You can't measure it. But unfortunately, when a lot of factions build up themselves, especially in New York, they all became very big, very successful in every capacity, both financially, but both in Torah, both in education. And these factions became stronger and more separated.
Yeah.
You went from Hasidic groups that were 1 unified to 2, and then 2 became 2 and 2, and suddenly became broken apart. See, Florida, fortunately, everybody here is an immigrant to some extent. Almost nobody's a naturalized person down here. There are a couple of that born down here, but for the most part, no. Everybody comes from somewhere. And so nobody feels here enough of a place to say, it's mine, it's me, where everyone unified themselves. And I see when we come to shul here, we literally have Ashkenazim, Sfaradim, Hasidim, we have religious, not religious, Hilonim, and we're all under one roof, and we all pray together. And the Borei Olam said, I need to show an example to the rest of the country how to behave amongst yourselves. And this was the example. Hashem said, okay, so down here, I don't need to show you guys the corona restrictions. Let me do it in the places that, and you know what? All the shuls got shut down, the schools got shut down, the yeshivot shut down. And this was a big lesson that I learned from down here. Is that the achadut down here definitely supersedes what was in New York.
You didn't shut down.
No, we did it. Baruch Hashem, we did it. And that's the point I'm making, that New York had the problem and here we didn't. And I think from this, there's a tremendous lesson that we need to learn, is that was the problem why we are stuck here. The moment that we become unified, it gets better. Just like in Israel, this whole October 7 massacre from Hamas, if you look at what was predating the last 6 months before, it was a tremendous amount of fighting between Jewish people. It was worse. Now, and I'm not, and by the way, and I'm not a big news guy. I'm not a big news guy. I don't like to read the news. I don't want to really, but this was apparent enough that it got out there. We need to know that it's not easy to love another person. It's just, the Gemara says, just like the faces are different, so it's much easier to hate. It's much, but you know what? It's hard. It's hard that when someone does something that you're not comfortable with. But I told Yossi this, the more, Temanim have unique customs, let's say, and Hasidim have unique customs, and they look awkward from the outside, from a Sfaradi point of view. But the more that we started learning the customs of the Timanim and of the Hasidim and understanding more their background, the more it became much more acceptable and accepting of their style.
The concept is less foreign.
The concept is less foreign, and this is very important for us to know that this is going to be our ticket. You want to be successful, you must have ahavat hinam. You must be able to love others.
100%.
And I think this is the key. We're going to continue.
I think that God gave ahavat hinam to the world 100%. I took 90% and left 10% to the world.
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
Sammy,
Also,
I love you.
love everybody. I know
Sammy,
it's always, I mean,
I love you.
always.
Also, I think you have a lot more renegade.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
See you tomorrow again, same time, same place.
All right, Baruch Hashem. So let's continue. We're on part 5. This is the article to Fleet or to Say by Joe Bobker. It's a Jew born in a displaced persons camp in Ulm, Germany. His question was, why was he born in a displaced persons camp? What happened? Why didn't his parents flee? So we are on page 27. We're almost done with it. And when we're done with this, we're going to be going to an even more controversial topic of what is Da'at Torah? What is, we use the term very freely. Do you have to listen to Da'at Torah? What is Da'at Torah? What do you think Da'at Torah means? Okay, that would be a basic thing. Anyone else have like a quick understanding what you think Da'at Torah means? No? All right, we're going to get into it hopefully at the end of the week. Probably we'll start on Thanksgiving or the day afterwards, and we'll get into it on it. So let's continue. When Adolf Eichmann arrived in Budapest in March 1944 to deliver a quick death blow to the Jewish communities of Greater Hungary, Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Weiss, the second Spinka Rebbe, received an immigration permit for Palestine through neighboring Romania. I want to read you the note on the bottom. By March 1944, Eichmann had assembled the most efficient Jew-killing team of the Holocaust. From Slovakia and Greece came Dieter Wislenski. From France and Bulgaria came Theodor Danneker. From Paris came Alois Brunner. From Vienna came Hermann Krumi. From Bergen-Belsen came Siegfried Seidel. They were experienced and savage bloodhounds of European Jews. Their instructions were simple: kill the Jews of Hungary quickly. They realized they were going to lose the war, and they wanted just to,
Time was running out.
time was running out. And
800,000.
when Rudolf Hoss, the commandment of Auschwitz, complained to Eichmann that he could not, guys, listen to this. When Rudolf Hoss, the commandment of Auschwitz, complained to Eichmann he could not process such large numbers of Jews properly, Eichmann ordered him to forget about selections and just gas everybody who stepped off the train. Just kill everybody as fast as you can. Look at, and by the way, Germany was the most advanced civilization of the time. And by the way, they're one of the most advanced civilizations today.
In what sense?
In production of products. I mean, you know, I tell everybody, what does the United States manufacture? Can someone tell me what the United States manufactures? Something?
I know
Weapons.
What do they manufacture?
Weapons.
Maybe weapons. You're right. Weapons is a good one, but I don't know.
They used to manufacture all the electronics.
Nothing. Everything goes. By the way, you know how many things come from Germany? Germany, Japan, China. There's so many products that are manufactured there, and by the way, and high caliber products. There's no reason. There's a reason why, you know, when someone makes a little bit more dough, where does he go? He doesn't get himself a Toyota. He gets himself a Mercedes. And there is something to that, you know. And the Germans were very advanced. But what shows us, what is this article showing us, is that an advanced civilization is not one that's going to protect civil rights of human beings. This was a good example. They don't go necessarily together. And you know, we know that from Sodom and Amorah. That Sodom and Amorah was a tremendously advanced also nation. But when it came to helping others, they did not hear it.
The Philistines were very advanced.
Possibly. Okay, so the Holocaust in Hungary from Robert Major. In Jewish currency, December 1995, only 10% of the 800,000 Hungarian Jews loaded onto cattle car carriages to Poland survived the war. So out of 800,000?
No, less.
Oh, let's see. Only
20,000.
Only 10% of the 800, he says here 10. So let's see here, of the 800,000 Hungarian Jews loaded onto cattle car train carriages to Poland survived the war. That means 80,000 out of Hungarian Jews. By the way, Satmar is Hungarian, correct?
I'm Hungarian.
You're Vishnitz, right?
Outside of
It's also, you should know, where does the word Satmar come from, guys? Anyone know? Anyone? You ever hear of Santa Maria? Mm-hmm. Okay, in Hungary it's called Satu Mare. So when someone says Satmar, in essence they're saying Santa Maria, but in the way of a Hungarian. It's not a Jewish word. Don't think it's Jewish. Well, because the way the Hasidic movements were created is by where the cities. So like you have like the Bostoner Rebbe, you have the Brooklyn. There's no Brooklyner Rebbe, but if there were like a Hasidic group, it would be the Brooklyner Hasidim. So it's not necessarily that they're calling it, but you have to know the essence of what their name is Santa Maria, which is Santa Maria, which is it's interesting just to know that. We love Samar Hasidim. Don't get me wrong. I love all Jews. I mean, maybe not the Neturei Karta who march with our enemies. I mean, I don't think any Jew. That's a big Hilul Hashem. I spoke with Rabbi Galatzin about this. Tremendous Hilul Hashem. There's no basis in Torah about this. Don't think they have any sources of any kind. There's nothing of any kind. If there was, we would open the Gemara here. I would discuss the Gemara with you. There is one Gemara that they probably might hinge on, but that's nothing that they can. There's nothing to base it. And if someone has something, I'd love to read about it and teach about it if there is a counter opinion. But let's take a look. Until then, Treblinka held the murder record: 900,000 Jews killed in 17 months. Wow, you see, these guys were holding records, how much they can kill more. Treblinka, okay, with Belzik coming in second. I wasn't so familiar with Belzik, but that was 600,000 Jews killed in 10 months. In 1943, Hitler had closed Treblinka and Belzik out of compassion. No, there were no more Polish Jews to kill. He shut down the thing. They killed everybody. And you should know, Poland...
They went out of business.
Poland, if I'm not mistaken, most of the concentration camps, or the death camps, I should say, were in Poland. We're in Poland, and it's interesting to know that. Okay, the 69-year-old sage refused to leave and was murdered in 1944 in Auschwitz, together with 31 members of his family. He didn't want to leave. Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum, the Satmar Rav, had two opportunities to flee in 1941 and 1943, but he stayed. Fortunate is he explained, who has the privilege to take part in rescue activity in such a time of trouble. The Satmar Rav eventually got out on the Kastner train in December 1944. Whoa. You know, but at that time, that was literally right before June 45 when they started to liberate. He literally got out during the time of everyone being murdered.
You should read that book I lent you. It's all about what you're saying right now.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it. I'm gonna get to it. When his followers in Tiberias, Palestine, gave him an escape route, Rabbi Shlomo David Yehoshua Weinberg, the Rebbe of Slonim, politely demurred. I may have made a mistake in staying here, but what can I do? Small children are depending on me. See, so some of the Gedolim, if you look around, they came to a point where they kind of realized, you know, we got to get out. Or like if you stayed behind, it was problematic. But he has a
Some of them stayed not out of ignorance, out of passion. You know, they wanted to stay with the people.
Yeah, they want to stay with the people. We read about that yesterday. With his family already murdered, Rav Weinberg was marched to the edge of a mass pit in November 1943 and subsequently shot. Rabbi Kolinimus Kalman Shapira, the Piasner Rebbe. You familiar with that one, Sammy? Piasner Rebbe? Okay. A dynamic Hasidic leader of Polish Jewry, Rosh Yeshiva of an elite institution, Das Moshe, you know, because it's Ashkenaz, in Warsaw, and author of a remarkable series of Holocaust sermons, Esh Kodesh, Holy Fire, courteously spurned efforts by his Mizrahi friends to get him out of Warsaw to Vilna. The Jews at the time were called Mizrahi Jews. There's two types of Jews. There's the Sfaradi Jews and there's the Mizrahi Jews. They're not the same. The Sfaradi Jews were Jews that left Spain, and they went to the Middle Eastern countries when they got out. They went to Morocco, North Africa, Turkey. Even, by the way, we spoke yesterday that the Alter Rebbe, Rav Shneur Zalman Meliadi, was Sephardi. He came from Spain, and he had the Spanish roots there. The Mizrahi Jews were the Jews that never left the Arab countries. So my family is from the Mizrahi Jews of Iraq. We never were in Spain. We never spoke Ladino. I had done a lot of research to find this out, and we concluded that we weren't, which is kind of interesting. So our family seemingly was one that had stayed in Bavel, either from Bayit Rishon or from Bayit Sheni, and we kind of stayed put in Iraq for over 1,500, 1,800 years. We didn't leave Iraq, which is kind of interesting. He says here, explaining, I do not intend to abandon the front and I cannot leave Polish Jewry, even though Polish Jewry was non-existent anymore. Hitler had to shut down the death camp because there were no Jews to kill anymore. After his only son, daughter-in-law, and aunt were killed by Stuka dive bombers in a bombing raid, and his mother had died, Rav Shapira sighed, "I have already been personally beaten in this war." He then spent the rest of his short life helping other Jews. The 50-year-old holy man was murdered in Trauniki labor camp in early 1943, having earlier defined the meaning of leadership. A Rebbe who is not willing to descend into hell in order to rescue his followers from destructions is not a Rebbe. And he brings, that was actually right below the title of the beginning of this article. The bitter criticism. Rebbetzin Esther Farbstein, the refined great-granddaughter of the Ger Rebbe, Rabbi Avraham Mordechai Alter. I just want to tell you, I met the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Shaul Alter, just a few weeks ago. The Ger Rosh Yeshiva. He was here a few weeks ago. He was in Boca. He was tremendous. By the way, what a simcha. You meet him, you feel happy just seeing him. I'm telling you, some people, he had a simcha to him. And I met him and I invited him to come again to Miami. I told him, come on a 3-day trip. I'll spend the 3 days taking him around. And they seemingly agreed. So hopefully, God willing, he will be coming back down. So Rabbi Avraham Mordechai Alter was born after the war and raised in Jerusalem in a Holocaust-conscious home. Farbstein wrote a master thesis at Hebrew University, which is in Jerusalem, on the rescue of Hasidic Rebbe's during the Holocaust, and later published the classic 2-volume Beseter Ra'am, Hidden in Thunder, Perspectives on Faith, Halakha, and Leadership During the Holocaust, in which she only touches on the uncomfortable issue of whether to stay or to flee and chooses not to make any judgment calls. Remember, we're not making any judgment calls. We're not. But we are discussing what happened, so can we learn something from here? That's what we're trying to determine. And can we see the signs of what happened before? Are they repeating themselves? And the answer is absolutely they are. But others did.
But there's one difference.
Yes, John.
That at that time, Jews were helpless.
Okay, very good.
Jews will help.
What else? What is the other thing? Very good. You brought up a point that I'm going to get to. What else, Sammy?
That's called a blind spot, I think. And again, that's even touching upon it.
Okay.
We always think that we don't know what we don't know, though. Back then, they also thought they didn't have to. Listen to the stories.
No.
Dolim, smart people who had the clues already, who had the knowledge, but it was too late.
But the fact is that back then, you had no way to defend yourself. There's nothing you can do.
What else did Hitler do? We didn't talk about it here, but we're going to get to it. What else did Hitler do?
How could he defend himself better?
In early 30s.
Then?
Sam, what else did he do that? People are not aware of this. He pulled all firearms from the population. People are not aware.
That's a huge...
I didn't get into it.
Exactly.
That was one of the things that he did.
They did it in Israel also.
Yes, it happened in Israel. I don't know all the facts in Israel. I did hear about it, but I want to get into it.
Things are changing now in
They're
Israel.
changing
They say
all
what
that.
they want,
Yes.
get it done.
I always thought that was insane.
Yeah. No, by the way, in early Germany, it was well known that once he came to power, he pulled weapons from the population, and that's very important. You have to see, are those things being reiterated again?
They've been trying.
Do you know what this Second Amendment is?
Yeah, the right to bear arms.
Prevent tyranny.
Why?
To prevent tyranny, the government.
Yeah, it's not to go hunting. It's in case the government goes against you, you have a weapon.
Right.
Listen, I think if George Washington was alive today, he would be like, what the hell is going on here? He goes, this is not the country I anticipated. You mean if I cross the street in the middle of the street, there's jaywalking? You have to understand, back then, there were no laws like this. It was, you know what? When the Constitution was originally established, you know who was allowed to vote? Only someone who owned land. You know why? Why would somebody who doesn't own land make a law on property taxes and the way I'm going to live? You want to live? No problem. But you can't vote a guy who owns land out. And there's something behind that. Obviously that doesn't exist anymore, but you have to understand, when the founding fathers came here, they had come from a tyranny in Britain. They didn't want that to be repeated here. So they put different types of systems in place to prevent that tyranny from coming again. Those systems are non-existent anymore, unfortunately.
You know why? Because they were created by people who wanted to abide by them, as opposed to people that look for reasons or the loopholes to break it.
And also, there was a very important part to this, is they had Judeo-Christian values. They valued the Bible, the Old Testament that they refer to, and there's something to that, because when you put God into the picture, of course there's a separation of church and state, but it does not mean a non-existent church.
Right.
Understand? And all state. It's that there's a separation. And when you take out God and religion completely from a society, it deteriorates very, very, very quickly. It's not, this history has been repeating itself over and over. Every time this is done, this has always happened.
We lose our morals, lose our values.
There are values and morals that are needed, because otherwise things go haywire very fast. But others did. In his seminal study on the Holocaust, Dr. Mendel Picars describes how in May 1944, on the steps of the Auschwitz crematorium, Rebbetzin Eva Halberstam of Kosis, the widow of Rabbi Abraham Shalom Halberstam, the famous miracle rabbi of Stropkov, who was murdered in 1940, bitterly criticizes the rabbis who fled their families and communities. So she had another response. How did they leave? Now the Amshinover Rebbe, he was very clear. He told everyone, he's like, look, I see what's happening. I already learned from the past. Everybody get out now. I'm warning and telling everybody get out. When they didn't listen, he said, I gave you the warning. I'm leaving with my family. You don't want to follow? I'm going to Israel. He went to Israel. He survived. Everything worked out fine.
That's fair enough.
He gave the warning. He picked up and he left. And whoever said, everyone said, and by the way, some listened. Some listened, some didn't. We're just putting it out there, okay? Now, her last Yiddish comments were recorded by Leib Langfuss, a Resh member of the Sonder Kommando. We'll read what that is now. And found in 1952. In 1954, Rebbetzin Halberstam's heartbreaking lament was published in Blätter für Geschichte, a scholarly periodical in Warsaw. You know, some guys are probably listening to the class like, this guy doesn't know how to read these Yiddish words. I speak Arabic, okay? All right, I'll give you Arabic to read, and then, you know, because some guys, and then we'll compare our Arabic to Yiddish, but it's okay. I am witnessing the end of Hungarian Jewry. The Hungarian government enabled large parts of the communities to escape. The Jews asked the Hasidic rabbis what to do, and they always calmed them down. The Belzer Rebbe said that in Hungary we would get away with mere anxiety. Now the bitter moment has come when Jews can no longer save themselves. Indeed, the heavens have hidden the truth from them. But they themselves escaped at the very last moment to the land of Israel. They have saved themselves but have abandoned the people like lambs to slaughter. Master of the universe, in my last minutes of life, I beseech you, forgive them for a great desecration of the divine name, Hilul Hashem. Wow. 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 And you know what? And this was on her, this was literally, this was came, by the way, who get from a Sonder Kommando. Let's take a look. He has at 67 a note here. The Sonder Kommando Jews, whoa, they were the Jews, the Sonder Kommando, were those who disposed of the corpse. Since these Jews saw and overheard things that were damaging to the Nazi cause, they were murdered at regular intervals. Only a handful out of several thousand survived and testified after liberation against their former employers. So I guess the Sonder commanders were Jews that, it's from what we see here, they buried, I guess, the people, but the Nazis just disposed of them.
That the Sonder commando Jews, at the time, when they were taking the bodies and putting them in the ovens, that was their job. They were the most, I don't want to say righteous, they were the most courageous Jews out of all of them, because they chose to live. They chose to survive. Because it was very easy to see what was going on all around you
and give up.
And just to give in.
And by the way, John, just to go, you know, Zaka, who in October 7th had to do the cleanup in the kibbutz in Be'eri. Do you know, Rabbi Eliyahu just told me yesterday, he goes, you know how many of them came to him and said they're out of this business? A few of them went to a mental institution because they said what they saw was so, it affected them mentally so much. They need to go, they need to be recalibrated in their, that's, by the way, I'm not talking about 80 years ago, I'm talking about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And this is in Israel. And you know why I'm saying this? That these Sonder commanders, we have to give them credit. They buried the last remaining people at the risk of their lives. These people were the heroes. These people were things that
and they got killed, yeah.
And so many of them got killed because why? They knew everything. They literally knew everything was going on. They knew who was killing who. They knew where they were buried. They knew who said what. Listen, we got all this stuff just from the Sonder commandos. These are not the kapos, has v'shalom. No, the kapos were not. These are not. These were tzaddikim.
These are the guys who, when you came, they took off your clothes. They put you into the.
Not him. Lo aleinu.
No, I'm saying right? And then they put them into the gas chambers, and then the gas chambers open. They took them out and they put them in the oven.
All right, he has another note here. It's a great one. He says,
why you can do something like this?
Because you say, if I don't survive this, nobody will know. Okay? So
what's your question, Yossi?
How they can do it? Kill me? I don't want to.
No, they didn't kill anybody. No, they didn't kill anybody.
His question is different. Question is, you know what? You tell me to kill people, I'm not doing it. Kill me. That's what you're saying.
No. That's what
You're saying how could they take part?
How could they take part?
They
in
didn't
this
kill
action?
anybody. You're not understanding. No. The Sonder commanders didn't kill anybody. They just did the
He
dirty
said
work.
they put him in the oven.
And they were dead already. After they gassed them.
No, not only that.
They were dead.
No,
but why did you put them in the oven? Why did you put them in the oven? Because he didn't want to bury the people. So its ashes is much easier to put together. The Jews were dead. These Sonder commanders never killed anyone, from what I understand.
You're missing the way it worked was first they put them into the gas. In the gas they died. Now what do you do with all the bodies? They were burning the dead bodies. They weren't killing the people.
Yeah, allowed to burn. You're allowed to burn bodies.
So it's saying
I'm not giving you halakha here, but I can tell you they didn't kill anybody. They were just disposing of bodies at the risk of their life.
They were cleaning up.
They were cleaning up. And by the way, the Nazi SS, I guess, officers didn't want to do that dirty work.
No. By the way, the average lifespan of one of those guys who did that was no more than 6 months.
Meaning even he couldn't take it.
No, you can't. So
You weren't allowed to because you knew too much.
No. A lot of them committed suicide. They didn't die. A lot of them committed suicide. There's a book I read, probably the most intense book on the
Holocaust.
On the Holocaust. It's called
Treblinka.
And it's written by one of the guys who did.
Who was the Sonder commander?
Yeah. So at the end of when they saw the Nazis destroying the camp, they all made a run for it. 600 of them. They all ran into the forest. I don't remember. Out of the 600, if I remember the book correctly, 40 survived.
Wow.
And this guy wrote a book.
You know, some of these guys became partisans. You know, the guys who became partisans. I met one Jew in Israel years ago. He was like in his 80s. He was a partisan. Wow. By the way, the guy was like the Hulk. He was in his 80s. I'm not kidding. The guy was all muscles. Like I shook his hand. He almost broke my hand. He's in his 80s. But I was like so surprised. He said he told us at the store that he was a partisan. And when they went into the forest, they took like the uniforms. They would kill the SS officers, put the uniforms on. He goes, these guys were the most cruel to the SS and to the Nazis. He goes, they did not leave anything unturned. They took the nikama in a way that didn't exist. It's unbelievable. And this guy, he lived a long life. He kept the strength. And you know, Baruch Hashem, whenever you see someone that went through any of this, you always get a beracha. We never judge or rule, even if somebody went off the derech or whatever from the Holocaust. We don't. We don't. Rabbi Mansur made it very clear. You don't judge these people. You don't just get a beracha from them. These people saw things that it was like kind of like the Chorban Bayit Rishon, Bayit Sheni. Okay, he says here, Pierre Cars never addresses the issue as to whether one should or shouldn't flee, but merely passes judgment on those who did. The Midrash that Rav Tichel cites that rabbinic leadership should not abandon their communities is only the Talmudic source that directly discusses the issue. In 1967, on the eve of the Six-Day War, Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz, who had been with the Mir Yeshiva for 40 years from Poland to Jerusalem, also quoted this Midrash as he condemned yeshiva students whom he considered Torah leaders for fleeing Israel because of potential of hostilities. You know, the question comes up now. It was a recent question. They asked a few of the rabbis in Israel, should the yeshiva students go back now to Israel? And the answer is absolutely yes. You must send the yeshiva students back. And I'm not giving psak halacha. I'm going to give you a logic that a person would be an idiot not to see this logic in a clear way. You literally have people in Israel sending their 18, 19, and 20-year-old sons on the front lines. You're worried about sending him to yeshiva to study Torah, have lunch in a cafeteria, go to Mahane Yehuda, and that's what you're worried about? Busha. If someone's learning in Israel and he came back, he should go back to Israel and study in Israel. It's a busha. Your brothers are on Israel sending their kids on the front lines with machine guns in order to defend and save Klal Israel. And you're worried about sending him to go study Torah? I don't know what do you answer here. If he wasn't in Israel, leave that. If the guy literally was learning and he came back, you go back right to learn in Israel. You're the ones who's elif lamate. It's 1,000 to 1,000. That 1,000 were working, we're fighting. 1,000 were learning. Don't underestimate the Torah when we learn. We know from Moshe Rabbeinu, who was a general. Yehoshua ben Nun was a general. They understood this. These people created armies. They didn't just go into battle with tefillot. Tefillot was a component that was the ikad. It was the most important component. But they had weapons. And they set up armies, sometimes even small armies. But they set something up. So it's our obligation, if we're not on the front lines, to sit and learn Torah and to teach in anything that you like, any subject you like. Remember, we started studying a subject together. Any subject that speaks to you, you study. Find the Torah that talks to you. The Torah is very big. There's Torah, Gemara, Nevi'im, Ketubim, Chumash, Rashid. There's Talmud Bavli, Yerushalmi. There's Midrashim, there's Zohar, there's Kabbalah. Find anything you like, learn it, and get close to the Borei Olam. A historically important contribution is provided by Rabbi Yisachar Shlomo Teichtel of Piastani, a respected Av Bet Din, popular Rosh Yeshiva, a skillful author of the responsa Mishnah Sachir, and one of the preeminent rabbis in pre-war Hungary. In March 1942, when the brutal deportation of Slovakian Jews began, Rav Teichtel hid in the attic of his synagogue and in October began writing a diary. He was unaware of the full extent of the genocide or that he himself would soon become another death statistic at the Trawnicki death camp near Lublin. In a rare insight, stunningly unsparing in its criticism, Rav Teichtel, who had once supported the anti-Zionism of Rav Chaim Elazar Shapira of Munkach, and then, courtesy of Hitler, changed his mind, accuses the leading Hungarian, Romanian, and Slovakian rabbis, there's a lot of notes on this, of soothing their frightened communities by telling them that because of the zechut, the merit of their anti-Zionism, God would reward them and protect them from the Germans. Rav Teichtel is worth quoting at length. A large portion of our Israelite, European Jewish brethren who were killed would have been saved if they had already been in Eretz Israel. And now, who will accept the responsibility for the pure blood which has been spilled in our time? Similarly, all those who deterred the Israelites from going to Eretz Israel and participating with those building the land cannot purify themselves and say, our hands have not shed this blood. Those anti-Zionists who have a predisposition on this matter, fleeing to Palestine, will not see the truth and will not concede to our words. All of the evidence in the world will not affect them, for they are smitten with blindness, and their inner biases cause them to deny even things which are clear as day. Who amongst us is greater than the 12 spies, the Meraglim? What he's trying to say here is that the Meraglim were on a much higher level than we are today. They were prophets. They were the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. Nobody here was Zoche to the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. We're not Zoche for the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. We're not even Zoche for a prophet in our generation. At least not yet. Not yet. The Torah testifies that they were distinguished, righteous individuals. Nonetheless, since they were influenced by their desire for authority, they rejected the desirable land and led others astray, causing this bitter exile. These spies were prejudiced by hidden motives. The same holds true in our times, even amongst rabbis, rebbes, and hasidim. This one has a good rabbinical position. This one is established admor. And this one has a profitable business or factory, or a prestigious job which provides great satisfaction. They are afraid that their status will decline if they go to Eretz Israel. And I'm going to add a note. And they are right to be fearful because things might change. And I hope for the better. But it's a question. People of this sort are influenced by their deep-rooted selfish motives to such an extent that they themselves do not realize that their prejudice speaks on their behalf. People of this sort will not be convinced to accept the truth, even if they are shown thousands of proofs from the Torah. The holy Kabbalist Rabbi Eliyahu of Graditz, who resembles an angel of the Lord of hosts, states explicitly that the reason that there are tzaddikim who oppose Aliyah is because the klipot, the evil forces, have become strong within them. It entices them to nullify this great matter for which the Holy One, blessed be He, constantly longs. He longs for us to return to our forefathers' inheritance, For every Jew has an obligation to strive to return to our holy land, as I will prove unequivocally from the words of our sages. Rav Teichtel then quotes a variety of Torah and Talmudic sources who urge immigration to Israel because this can bring the final redemption closer speedily in our days. He has a note here on the bottom. It's Y.S. Teichtel, Em Habbanim Semecha. I want to read you a few notes that he had there, and then we'll end it for today. Esther Farbstein and others, for example, Rabbi Natan Ortner, a Belzer Hasid, called Picard's claim historically dubious and unreliable, and suggest that he is simply out to make a malicious swipe at the Hasidic leadership. This may or may not be true. However, over the years, I have personally heard and read the same grievance from embittered Orthodox survivors and family members in Sydney, Melbourne, Australia, Israel, and the United States. So even though this guy might not have had good intentions, Joe Bobker had seemingly heard the same thing from many other people in communities, I'll bet privately, not publicly. The diary was discovered at the end of after the war, and in 2000, the English version was published as Em Habanim Semecha, the mother of children is happy, on Eretz Israel, redemption and unity. Pesach Schindler, Tikkun, as a response to tragedy, Em Habanim Semecha, Rabbi Yisachar Shlomo Teichtel, Budapest 1943, in Holocaust and Genocide Studies 4, number 4, 1989. Rav Teichtel explains the Admor of Munkach positions. The Minchas Elazar opposed resettling and rebuilding the land, and based his entire position on the idea that salvation must happen with miracles and wonders. So that was the basis of the Minchas Elazar, that if it doesn't happen with miracles and wonders, it's no good. Let's continue. In his opinion, anyone who tries to bring salvation naturally denies the redemption which will occur miraculously. But Rav Teichtel was convinced that if his spiritual mentor had lived to witness and experience the crematoria, he too would acknowledge that we should leave the countries of the diaspora and go to Eretz Israel, which has been awarded to us by the world powers, and not wait for the Mashiach's call. So even those that had tremendously opposing opinions, seemingly, when push came to shove, many of them recalibrated their opinion, at least from what we're seeing here. We'll end this with this today. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.